In episode 7, Peter and Catherine bring Solomon in, and it's weird because he's very comfortable. It's like he's not worried at all. And maybe that's because Solomon makes it very clear to Peter that he knows a lot about him. He knows what happened to his father. He knows why he was investigated. He knows that he started off in the basement in the White House. One of the bits of info he tells Peter is that the FBI never investigated his father until he was arrested. In fact, no one investigated his father until he was arrested. But what he implies is that his father was investigated by night action. Catherine, who is watching this exchange from outside, pulls Peter out to try to calm him down. She tells him, he's trying to get you off your game. They then get into a conversation about the fact that Solomon and his team knew exactly what Rose and Peter were up to the night before, and it seemed like they knew what they were up to in Bangkok. Peter asked Catherine, is there a chance that he has an FBI informant who would have given him the key codes to our comms? Catherine has no idea, but what she does know is that Solomon has contacts throughout agencies all around the world. What she can't figure out is what the motive is. As they start piecing it together, Peter hypothesizes that Solomon is nothing more than a broker, which begs the question, who did he sell Foxglove to? Peter's phone then starts buzzing, and it's Rose. She's freaking out because there's something going on with Norah. His phone was buzzing because Rose was letting Peter know that Norah was freaking out, and she's headed to the basement. Rose is going to meet her, and Peter thinks he should be there as well. Peter heads over, and right before he arrives, Norah and Rose are talking in the basement, Rose having no idea that Norah already knows what happened to her brother. As Norah tries to trap Rose in a lie, she's able to successfully do it because Rose is sticking to the story that her brother was simply injured. Eventually, Norah just comes clean and says, I know what happened to my brother. You knew all along, didn't you? And Rose, being an honest person, says, yes, I knew. I'm sorry. As Rose is trying to explain herself while also apologizing, Peter shows up, and he knows right away that Norah is aware of what happened to her brother. Peter does exactly what Rose was trying to do, explain himself while also apologizing, but Norah doesn't want to hear it. She's livid. All Norah wants is honesty, and Peter eventually gives it to her, telling her exactly what happened to her brother. At this point, all Norah wants is to talk to her mother and make sure she's safe, and Peter tries to get her to come to a safe house, but she says, no, if you know that my mother is safe, put her on the phone. Unfortunately, when they call Sami, he doesn't answer. And a very fed up Norah says, well, I'll just go back to the mission, but Peter has to stop her and say, no, at this point, they know what happened to your family. This is acceptable enough for Norah, and she takes off, leaving the safe house. But she's being followed by Javid. Javid was thrown off by Norah's entire mood recently. He decided to follow her and see what she was up to. So when Norah went home, she was able to stay at her place for a little bit until she was picked up by Javid's men and brought back to the embassy, where she was interrogated by Javid, who at this point knew that she was selling secrets to the Americans. Javid lies to her and says, do you realize they left your mother and they left your brother in the dirt dead? And that's who you betrayed your country for? Seriously? Those people. He says some really unflattering things to her, he intimidates her, and he puts his hands on her. He makes it very clear that she's going to be sent back to Iran as a traitor, and she's not going to enjoy the outcome at all. She realizes that she has to get out of this some way, so she reasons with Javid and says, well, what happens if I bring you Peter, if I bring you the American? Javid agrees to it, but he keeps Norah at the embassy, which prohibits Norah from meeting up at that location later that night, where her mom is there with Sami to pick her up. And the fact that Norah doesn't arrive, that's a red flag for Sami and Norah's mother. As for Peter and Rose, when they arrive back in the safe house where Solomon was kept, Catherine is a little bit antsy. While they were gone, Catherine interrogated Solomon to no real avail. The only thing she was able to get out of him was the word cyanogen, which meant nothing to her, until 10 minutes later, government officials said that a chemical called cyanogen was stolen from a lab by some group of mercenaries. They were posing as workers, but they had fake papers. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out these are the same people that stole the mobile lab. And yes, this is Tomas, and his cousin's job. This was the big mission that Tomas had to be a part of. But the thing is, they're not going after one chemical. They're going after a few different chemicals. They're hitting up a bunch of different spots because they're trying to make one chemical weapon. The problem is Catherine and her team, they don't know what chemical weapon they're actually going to make. Rose looks over the Foxglove file and she sees a bunch of PhDs that she figures, okay, these are the chemists that must have worked on the project. Let's just go ask them. It's not the best plan, but she finds a chemist that is pretty close by. He's teaching at a college, and she heads on over. Peter wants to go with her, but Catherine says, no, you can't. You need to go talk to Solomon, because the only person he's willing to talk to is you, so get in the room and see if you can get anything out of him. Right before Rose does take off for Columbia University, she pulls Catherine aside and she says, hey, if the offer for Secret Service protection is still available, I'd like it, because I'm ready to go back to California. That's something that Catherine doesn't really want Rose to do, because Rose has been really valuable, but ultimately it is Rose's decision, and Catherine says, okay, yeah, I'll set it up. And the plan going forward is for Rose to track down this chemist from Columbia, see what he knows about the chemicals, and then head back and go to California. When Rose takes off, Peter does head into the room to interrogate Solomon. Catherine's on the outside watching the entire thing. And the first thing that Peter asks is, who stole the cyanogen? At first, he doesn't really give Peter much, but ultimately Peter's able to figure out that Solomon isn't calling the shots. The guy in Bangkok, the guy dripped out in all white, that's Solomon's boss. Peter starts working out the problem aloud. He knows that ultimately Solomon did the wrong things for the right reasons, and that right reason is his sister Celeste. Solomon's boss is clearly taking care of her. Peter uses this information to his advantage, telling Solomon that they could arrest Celeste for fraud. She's been collecting Solomon's government benefits because the government thinks that Solomon's dead, but he's not. A very frustrated Solomon says, really, is this what night action does? They incarcerate the crippled? And Peter says, no, we stop people like you. And that pisses Catherine off. She pulls Peter out of that room so fast, and she says, do you realize you just confirmed night action to this guy? That's it. Neither one of us says another word until Mosley arrives, because the director of the FBI wants to talk to Solomon. While Catherine and Peter wait for Mosley to arrive and interrogate Solomon, Rose has shown up at Columbia University and she's found the professor. His name is Dr. Cole, and at first Rose poses as a PhD student just asking questions, but he doesn't fall for that, so she has to get to the point. She pulls out information on Foxglove, and it spooks Cole. He doesn't want anything to do with it. He tries to call security. In order to stop him, Rose says, people are trying to make one of these weapons. I need your help to figure out which one it is. Cole can tell by her face and just her general reaction that this isn't a drill. So Cole brings her back to his place because he's got everything regarding Foxglove in his files in his home office. When they arrive, just to be on the safe side, Rose does text Peter the location of Cole's house, and then she heads down in the basement. Cole explains to Rose that they took months hypothesizing these potential weapons and creating antidotes for him, but they weren't able to create antidotes for all of them. Eventually, Cole was taken off the program, and he was told that the entire program was shuttered. Then, a world leader named Victor Bala was arrested for using chemical weapons on his own people, and when Bala was deposed, he claimed that he got the weapon from the United States government. No one at the UN could corroborate this, so they just wrote Bala off as a war criminal, and a crazy one at that. Cole, however, having worked on Foxglove, realized that some of the symptoms that these people died with were eerily familiar to some of the hypothesized weapons that they created. Cole couldn't prove it, but he figured that the U.S. government actually completed Foxglove and gave one of these weapons to Victor Bala. But he figured he might just be paranoid. That is, until Rose showed up. Unfortunately, Cole doesn't really know what weapon they would go after next, not with one chemical. But then they get a lead, because Catherine calls up Rose and lets her know that another chemical was stolen from another lab. And now they know of two chemicals, which gives Cole enough information to proclaim that the agent that they're trying to create is called KX. Essentially what it does is it poisons the air so much where every time you breathe in, it's burning your insides, but it's also blistering your outsides. It's very, very painful, and it's very, very, very deadly. Cole then gives them the rest of the chemicals in KX that the group would be going after. That way, they might be able to catch this group trying to steal more of those chemicals. This delays Mosley interrogating Solomon. He heads to one of the places, Catherine's going to head to the other, and she tells Peter, keep an eye on Solomon, make sure he doesn't do anything. While he's not happy about it, Peter just became a glorified babysitter. While he's trying to do his best babysitting job, about an hour later, Catherine calls up and says, "We got bad news. They hit this place earlier. They have 3 of the chemicals now." That's enough to create KX. Catherine tells Peter, "Me and Mosley are headed back to interrogate Solomon. You stay put." But he can't really help himself. Knowing that this terrorist group has enough to make this chemical weapon, it's got Peter completely on edge. So when he overhears Solomon say, "You can stop all of this. Just speak to my boss one-on-one, because I bet by now they have all the chemical compounds." But that isn't everything. These people can't build a chemical weapon on their own. They're going to need somebody to build it for them. A couple minutes later, Peter gets a phone call from Rose. Solomon was right. These people did need somebody to build a chemical weapon for them, and they chose Dr. Cole. Dr. Cole, his family, and Rose were at his house when the group showed up to take them. Dr. Cole's home is an hour away. There's no way Peter would arrive in time. And he's on the phone just listening to this skirmish go down. The group is easily able to get Dr. Cole and his family. But Rose, she's dispensable. The thing about Rose, though, is she's a really quick thinker. And she tells the group, "I'm Dr. Cole's assistant. And he's not going to be able to build this weapon on his own. So you need me." And they take her with to keep her alive. Peter, having no idea what happened to Rose, decides to take Solomon up on his offer. He unlocks Solomon's handcuffs, and he leaves the safe house. And when Catherine arrives, nobody's there, and she feels like she has a big problem on her hands.
Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.